Okay. So I think those who are joining online didn't miss much at all. Actually, it was just boasting about myself. That's all. So so misting in butts. Actually, that's I was trying. I knew I would say that. I tried so hard not to say, but someone you did it. I don't know how it happens. I don't know how it happens. So, anyway, it's uh, so I mean, we deal with myths and facts, and for some reason, people love to um, live in myths in this country. They love the aroma around myths. I don't know. I'm really like. Can you hear me? I don't think the mic is working. Is it working? I didn't pull anything. Off or not? Hari. Okay, thanks. For some reason, there's so much fun about myths. I mean, people love to believe in myth and talk about myth, but not many people like to talk about facts. And in medicine, uh, facts facts is actually nothing but data. Facts is all but nothing but data. It's all data, and myths are. Okay. නැකතට නෙවෙයි නේද වැඩ ඇල්ලුවා? හා? ඒක තමයි. Maybe that නැකතට වැඩ ඇල්ලීම is not really a myth, it's probably a fact, you see. Yeah. So things don't go right when you don't do it. Okay. So okay. No, it's no, okay. Yeah, thanks. All right. So I mean, sometimes you might wonder that if a paper is published in a very good journal with a very high impact factor, all is rosy and right. But then in 2005, Lancet published an article by a man called Subo. I think that's how it's pronounced, Subo. He published an article of nearly 1,000 patients, a case control study, and he said that long-term use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is associated with reduced incidence of oral cancer. And this was a cheap drug to use, and it sounded very attractive when he published in Lancet. And then some of his colleagues working in the same hospital doubted this. There were some whistleblowers. Love whistleblowers. Whistleblowers are those people who say like, this is wrong. Get up and say this is wrong. So they started investigating his results, and then they worked out within the hospital, and then sent a letter to Lancet saying that information that strongly indicates that they have found information that indicated that his data had been fabricated, manipulated. And it was then they later mentioned the word that actually his work has been entirely a complete fabrication. So much so that when they went through his research data, they found that 250 subjects in his cohort of 9,000 patients had the same birthday. So he has just sat in his room, inside his room, over a cup of coffee, has fabricated with data. Then there was another study, but this guy published his results indicating that gene expression signatures could be identified in two cancers, lung cancer and breast cancer. And then he designed 3 randomized control trials to test his new theory. So there were 3 large randomized control trials, targeted therapy involving 2 breast cancers, two cancers, breast and lung cancer. Again, two colleagues from his hospital, Bagley and Coombs, decided they requested the raw data. Usually, when you publish your results, you should be the journal asks you whether you like to make available raw data. So the raw data was available, and they analyzed, and he realized that his data has been completely fabricated. And then, of course, thereafter, that article was taken out, and then in the subsequent 3-4 years, 10 of his articles were retracted by those journals. So these also so this comes to research misconduct. Now there are several aspects of research misconduct. I mean, this list, sometimes withholding results. So I'm paid by a drug company. I do a clinical trial, and the trial doesn't indicate that that particular drug works. I decided not to publish that. That is research misconduct. Then, if I have conflict of interest, if I'm involved in a drug or a equipment, and in the company of which I'm a shareholder, and I run the clinical trial, and then I publish results, positive results. Now that's a conflict of interest. Then there are so many other things like FFP. I'll come to FFP later. Sometimes misusing seniority. Now, for example, I mean, you can use your miss seniority in collecting data, and so many other things. Bias. We'll be talking about all these things. So the implication of this is that research misconduct leads to myths, creation or generation of myths in medicine that become the practice, and followed by many generations to come. So fabrication is making up, the FFP is fabrication, falsification, and plagiarism. So falsification is actually you have data, but you manipulate it in the way that you want, and you present your data. Plagiarism is you take somebody else's results and publish it, or you cite your own, you plagiarize your own work and write new articles. So how common is this creation of myths? How common is the creation of myths? There was a survey done among about 3,000 doctors working in hospitals, research centers, and then the result was that 13% of these doctors had first-hand information about research misconduct. 13%. That's quite a large number. They have not just hearsay, but first-hand information about misconduct. And if you look at in 2011, 381 articles are retracted by the journals. So this was the year of retraction. They call it the year of retractions. This is the year that highest number of papers are retracted from international medical journals. So for some reason, people later realized that the research has been fabricated, data has been manipulated, and therefore these articles, 384 articles, were retracted in that year. So that tells you that it's a common problem. It's a common problem. Now, as for a simple, humble, as someone mentioned, man like me, when I read something or when I hear something that someone says, how do you know that this is mythical, whether this is myth or a fact? How do you know that? I mean, I have heard my colleagues and my seniors saying, "Oh, this works. This is this. That works. It doesn't work." So how do you know that that is actually a myth rather than a fact? Now, I have my own method of looking at, suspecting if some information is wrong or not. for single author papers. If somebody has written a single author paper, there's only one author or maybe two authors in a paper, well, you really need to worry about such papers, such information. And if you find that results are overwhelming, that the wow factor of research, my goodness, this drug given cures 90% of the patients, something like that, then you need to really think about, oh, this is, how can this be? Well, if we should also ask about how biological plausible that result is. I mean, there was this famous article, the research article that we used as an example created in this country, but I'm not going to mention names. So there was something, some simple procedure prevented the case fatality reduced from about 60% to 20%. Massive reduction of case fatality. But however hard you searched, that was not biologically plausible. I could not find a biological explanation for that result to be a true result. Later on, other research studies were done and proved that that was wrong. And sometimes you have a very small team, 2-3 people, and you have huge outputs from a small team of researchers. But again, that also, it can still happen, but you need to really worry about the research. Really good impact research needs people and a proper organizations. And of course, conflict of interest. If you think that there is conflict of interest in the work that has been presented by the authors, then of course you need to realize that there may be an issue, and then you need to investigate it further. Now, so this is, I think some of you may have seen this. Is that clear? This is the pyramid of quality of evidence. So right at the bottom lies opinions, expert opinion, opinions of your seniors, colleagues, opinions given in television, opinions given in newspapers, and that gives you the lowest level of evidence, or they are the biggest myths. And you ascend case reports. Again, I would not change my practice, or I would not, think seriously about a case report. However, serious the result maybe. Case series and case studies are good. Cohort studies are even better. And of course, the non-randomized controlled trials are better than that. Randomized controlled trials are actually the best way to show that something works or does not work. Then, of course, when you ascend the hierarchy of evidence, they have you can do systematic reviews and then meta-analysis. These tell you that you collect all the randomized controlled trials available, all the research studies available on a particular topic. You pool the data and then analyze the data again and tell you that then you realize whether in this pool of research studies you may get some studies positive, some studies negative, and you work out what that pool of controlled trials tell you. Now, I was going to talk about this how expert opinion has could have led us to a serious disaster. So I'm going to talk about two studies that I was involved with, and that that we were able to bust some myths. So the expert opinion of the world was that my research is mainly on pesticide poisoning. So people believe that storing pesticides in a safe place can prevent self-harm by pesticide, which is very rational. You have your two bottles of pesticides in a box, and in the box has two padlocks, and of course, self poisoning is actually impulsive event. So I want to kill myself, and then I need my wife's consent or assistance to go and open the second lock. I have one key, my wife has the other key. So I'm going to tell my wife, look, I want to kill myself. Can you open the other lock? I'll open one and you open the other lock. And yeah, and then that during that period, that impulses go away, and then you will not go and kill yourself or open the box, or obviously your wife will not give it. Um, but you will have to go and break two locks, and by the time you break the box and take the poison out, your impulse is gone, and in the meantime your family has time to go and call other people, bring them in, and then stop you from taking that poison. And that was actually going to be the world policy at that time. What do you think? That sounds good, isn't it? Like, you keep the harm away, and then you need a lot of effort to get to the poison. And this was backed up by some evidence that we produce ourselves. We found that people don't go on planning for hours and days, or for days and weeks before you kill yourself. There's very little planning about taking a poison. It's about majority of them plan it for about half an hour, and then most people found the poison in their homes. You don't get, you don't have to go to a shop and buy it and come. So these two gives you, somebody is sad, impulsive, the poison is inside the house, you go to the kitchen and swallow it. And you give a box which is buried in the garden with two locks, and that will prevent poisoning. So that sounds a good idea, isn't it? What do you think? Okay, well, I thought, at least people thought. So then, before the governments are getting ready to implement this, give boxes to to store pesticides. But we said, look, wait, we will try it out whether it really works or not. So we decided to actually trial it out to see whether this is really a myth or a fact. So this study, so we had to select an area in North Central Province. To one group, we had to give these boxes. The other group were the control group. And how many people do you think would be enough? 100, 200, 300, 400? So there's a thing called the sample size calculation. So when you calculate the sample size, we needed 223,000 people in this study to show that it prevents 10% of deaths. So that was the sample size that our statistician told us. So you need 223,857 people to show that boxes would prevent deaths. Now, can you imagine this against an expert opinion? People sitting in this room and think, "Oh, that's a good idea. Let's give this out." You could earn a lot of commission if you are the person who develops these boxes and sells it to the government. You would have become very rich. So this is the area. So the red dots are the controls. The blue dots are the people who got it. So it's a lot of work. So this is again important to tell you that busting myths is sometimes very cumbersome, very expensive. So this study cost about 1.2 million pounds to do this. A lot of people. So you see, we had to, these are the boxes that we gave. They were buried in the garden, and there were two lockable, two locks to each. And then this is a float. I'm just telling you this. I'm not talking about my study. I hope this goes into your head. This is a flow chart. This chart tells you what happened to every individual in that study. And then, what did the results show you? There were 82 fatalities in the intervention, those people who got the box, and there were 67 fatalities in the group that did not get a box. And we looked at the data. There was absolutely no difference whether you had a safe box or not. Absolutely no difference. Now, so imagine if Sri Lankan government decided to distribute these boxes to the whole country, that would have been an utter disaster. So that the myth, and then the only way to bust a myth is giving you data. So we realized that now it is not promoted at all. So how do you know now? You should ask me, how do you know that I did not? No, we did not fabricate the data. So I did not get this contract to produce these boxes. I was angry. I manipulated the data, fabricated the data, and gave you a negative result. Yeah, how am I going to do it? So there are several ways, but I'm going to show you one system. There is this Cochrane back review. There are criteria you could ask from me about. I don't know whether you can see it. There are a few boxes. So you can ask about how the randomization was done. Was the treatment allocation concealed? Were the groups similar at baseline? Were the people who collected data blinded to the intervention? We couldn't do that because it is obvious. Sometimes you can't blind every study. Uh, uh, was the outcome assessor, those who analyzed the data, aware of the group allocation? So if the person who is analyzing in some other country knew what is the A, what is A, what is B. So was the compliance acceptable in both groups? The dropout rate, the important thing was it similar in both groups, because if something is not acceptable, that group will have more dropouts. So for some reason, so those are markers, so red flags that you can look at to see if the study was conducted properly. So the other thing, the finally, was the timing of the outcome measurement that was the same. Sometimes you can measure in one out, intervention group early and the control group late, and then give you false results. So you could ask these questions when you read a paper, or when you listen to someone. You should ask all these questions from that person. So, oh, sorry. Yeah. So my answer to some of those questions are these. These are baseline group characteristics. They were, similar numbers, almost similar numbers. Their age, their gender, acceptable level, dropout rate, they're almost the same in both groups. So that tells you that this has been done properly. And this data is available for you to, if anyone in this audience or anywhere in the world wants to look at it, this data is available in a public domain. You can analyze it yourself. So that is how it happens now, and that is how it should happen. So that is to show that this data was not fabricated. And this data was audited by several groups for accuracy. So it does not also falsify. The data has not been falsified. And the other thing is, for example, if you look at a drop in blood pressure, or feeling good, feeling well, hospital duration of hospital stay, those outcomes can be easily manipulated, and it's very difficult to check. But if you use whatever hard outcomes, like a numerical value of, for example, blood sugar, or live or dead, something like that, very hard outcomes. So if you have in a study, if you have hard outcomes, it is very difficult to fabricate or falsify data. So our outcome was death, and then this, you can't fabricate this. We looked at death certificates of all these patients. We also went to police stations and corroborated this data with police. So there was data tracking and lots of things that went into this study. So if such is not available in a paper that you're reading, you have to think twice about the accuracy of that study. So what did the myth we busted? That improved, hiding your pesticides in a box is not going to prevent self-harm. And this actually was completely against the global policy at that time of, giving a box to every farmer in the world to, hide their pesticide. So then we realized that the best way is to actually withdraw highly toxic pesticides from the market, so that, you cannot buy it. So that is what we promoted. So I'm again telling you, treat expert opinion with a pinch of salt because it lies at the lower end of the pyramid. Data is the expert. If an expert talks using data, then it's fine. But without data, if somebody is telling you, oh, this is good, that is bad, you take it with a pinch of salt. And as I told you, removing false expert opinion is time consuming, costs a lot of money. So those who listen to this advice must be careful, and those who give such advice should also be careful, because this false information can go down generation. Countries can change their policies, and for no good outcome at all at the end. So remember this again. Now, well, this is someone knows that I'm not a religious person, but please, permit me to use this. But this, I think, is the first inscription of evidence-based practice. This Kalama Sutra, yeah, I like this. What it says is, do not believe in anything because you have heard it. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. Do not believe anything because it is spoken and rumored by many. Do not believe in anything because it is foundly written in your books. Let's leave the religious books. In your medical books. Do not believe in anything merely on the authority of your teacher, or who says it. But after observation and analysis, I don't know how this came about. When you find anything that agrees with reason is data in this case, and conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and practice it. That's what it said. So, you have to challenge every bit of information that comes to you. Whoever would says it, wherever it is written. That is how it improves. That is how science moves forward. Now, so we had this expert opinion about pesticides, and this is the toxicity. Pesticides were categorized according to LD50 values, and the WHO, World Health Organization, took decisions based on this. They were classified into extremely hazardous, highly hazardous, moderately hazardous, and so on and so forth. And pesticides are imported to this country and many other countries based on this. So extremely hazardous, you get class 2 will be moderately hazardous. Not many people die from it. That is what it means. Yeah. So we decided, okay, this could be a myth, because we saw a lot of people dying from pesticides. So-called moderately toxic poisons kill a lot of patients. So we decided to collect data over so many years. Again, myth busting a myth is a long, tedious process. So in this cohort of study, we have now studied close to 200,000. But by the time this publication went in, we had studied about 80,000 people. So we had 80,000 people taking poisons around the country. We analyzed their blood samples, so nobody could say that we were fabricating data. And they found that what the WHO said, their classification was entirely wrong. Some of the mildly poisonous, some of the lower classes, that said, mildly poisonous resulted in higher number of deaths. For example, you can look at paraquat. It was a class 2 pesticide, but that killed nearly 100% of patients. So many other pesticides labeled as mild, WHO class 2 and 3, killed a lot of patients. So that was really a myth that the WHO followed. So we were able to produce this data, and we got the government to ban those some pesticides from importation and sale in this country. So this shows the case fatalities. So this is the green revolution, where suicide rate increased exponentially. They banned without any evidence class 1 and class 1 pesticides here, and with our data they banned 3 pesticides, dimethoxyphenthine and paraquat, and that resulted in a dramatic reduction of deaths from pesticide poisoning in this country. When we started work, about 15% died from pesticide poisoning. 15%. So during this period, these pesticides are banned based on our recommendation. The government banned these pesticides, and now less than 4% die from pesticide poisoning. So that's a huge reduction of deaths from pesticide poisoning. So this was actually, this is a bit of boasting about our research group. The WHO planned to reduce deaths by 10% by 2020, but we were able to reduce it by 70%, and that our work resulted in reduction of or saving about 100,000 deaths over the 10 years. And this, we calculate the cost of each life saved. It was about $43 for each life. So we were able to save a life with $43. And this is a good outcome of busting a myth. I mean, had we believed the WHO data, still the paraquat would still be around, all the other dimethoate would still be around, all the other nasty pesticides would still be around, and a lot of people would be dying. The rate of self-harm has not reduced. Same number of people still take pesticides, but a very few. If you in your unit more than 4% of people die from poisoning, then there is something wrong. It cannot happen. Yeah. And we were presented with this award, Future Policy Award. So this became actually future policy. So Sri Lanka got this award. Our names are not mentioned in this award, but I think we as Sri Lankans, we got this award. Now, can we do better? Can we do better? Now, this is a typical life of a person who takes a pesticide. He falls sick at home or the paddy field. He's put in a 3-wheeler, goes to a primary hospital, and then ends up in a secondary hospital in an ambulance. This is what happens. So when the patient goes here, or luckily, if sometimes you're lucky, you might get an antidote here, but most people get their treatment there, and there's a huge delay from here to that. Can we do something can you do something here? We don't know. Doing something there in the paddy field, would it help? Would it help reduce deaths? So is it So this is another study done by one of our colleagues. What the study found was that there are two ways of giving atropine to organophosphorus insecticide poison patient. In the conventional bolus protocol, you keep on doing boluses until the patient gets atropinized, and then the other method is giving titrated doses based on clinical response, doubling doses. And they found that the rates of ventilation is far less, and the death case fatality is also really low, 8%, if you give it titrated. And if you give it the usual standard practice, the case fatality is 22%, nearly 3 times higher. So but one of the things that we found in this study was that this is the Kaplan-Meier graph. You can see most deaths occur within the first few minutes. So this is the doubling dose. Few people die. This is the conventional dose. A lot of people die. But you can see during this period, from 0 to maybe 4 hours, most of the deaths occur within that window of 3 to 4 hours. So then we realized, if we give treatment here in the paddy field, now that sounds like a nice expert opinion, isn't it? A lot of people die within the first few minutes, first few hours. People take longer to get to hospital. If you give atropine in the paddy field itself, you can save a lot of lives. Now that sounds like a very good, very nice expert opinion, isn't it? Yeah. What do you say? It sounds very, very sensible, like the safe storage of pesticides expert opinion. Now, So the idea is to make atropine auto injectors, make them available in the village. Moment somebody is supposed to have taken a organophosphate insecticide, you go and inject it. So that's like brilliant. WHO would love this. Governments would love this. But then, is it just another expert opinion? But to prove that it is not an expert opinion or a myth, but is a real fact, you need to prove this that it works. So you must prove that. Will the people like it? Will the villager like to take it? Will somebody non-medical person would have to give it? And would he like it? Would you like your grandmother jabbing an injection onto your thigh? I don't know. We have to find that out. Where can you keep these injectors in a village? In a Sri Lankan hot, humid village, where can you keep it? We don't know. And who is going to inject it? Now, these are all questions. So before you really reckon this, you must do a nice qualitative study to answer all these questions. How many people would like? What do people think about it? We have to go and study the population and find out whether they like it or not. Where do you think would the atropine be stored in a temple or Grama Sevaka's house or school or where? We don't know. But the people will tell us when you do the qualitative study where to store the atropine injector and then who is going to inject it. So that needs a qualitative study. Then finally you had to also find out whether this auto injector will prevent actually deaths. So that needs a randomized control clinical trial. Now we are about to do this study. Now, I don't want you to ask me these questions. I don't know whether you fabricated this data, whether you falsified this data, how So before that, we are ready to answer your questions, and there is a nice way that you can prepare as researchers, prepare yourself to answer these questions. These are called the consort guidelines. If you ignore them, you'll be at a serious problems later on. So there's a set of 22 questions that you ask. This is the set of questions you should ask when you evaluate a study, a research study done by somebody else. So I haven't started the study, but I'm looking into it now so that I will not have issues later on when I finish the study. So there are various aspects. It's available on the web. So how much time do I have? Huh? No problem. So how do I avoid pitfalls? How do I take it, prevent my research? But this is one of the studies that someone mentioned about that we've got this big grant for, which is going to happen in several countries. So how do I prevent all these things happening? One of the areas that people make mistakes is not paying attention to bias. So there are various bias, selection bias, how you select your patients. Then ascertainment bias, that is when you analyze the data, can there be a bias involved? What about exclusions? And then of course publication bias, which doesn't come here. So selection bias is I'm not telling you, this is how you look at a paper. That's why I'm telling you. So if I know now, where one of the somebody gets poisoned and he comes to me, and if I know before the patient comes in, if I know that the next patient is going to be given the active treatment or the placebo treatment, I can manipulate taking or not taking that patient into the study. If I see a patient coming in, it looks very ill, old, and I don't want that person go into my study, and if I don't want that person to get the active treatment so that I can manipulate my results later on, I would take consent in a way that the patient says, that sort of. So if I know what allocation the next patient is going to get, I can manipulate recruitment of patients. So you have to find out in a paper, in a research article, how the researchers avoided this selection bias. So that has to be very meticulously written. that the person who randomizes did not know who the next person is. So what you do, the best way to prevent this is concealed allocation, where your allocation is concealed, that the clinicians, the researchers do not know what the next person is going to get. Then the ascertainment bias is that is, I'm analyzing this data, I want this treatment to work, and I can, manage it in a way, manage my data in a way that I manipulate the data, the results. So for this, there are various ways that there is an independent committee. In a good clinical trial, there is an independent data monitoring committee, and the researchers actually have no access to the collected data. The data is sent to this committee, and they analyze the data and tell you what it is. So you have no business to do analyze your own data. If you do that, you can manipulate. Obviously, I have the data in my computer. I analyze it the way I want. And those analyses must be pre-specified. Before you start the study, the analysis must have been pre-specified. But double blinding is very straightforward. We have preconceived ideas about this works or this doesn't work. And then, when we, if you don't know what the patient got, we'll be very genuine in the way we look at, sometimes, even documenting signs and symptoms. So this is when a patient comes in, your allocation is concealed, then you are randomized, and then there's blinding. So this is a very important thing. When you look at evidence, you have to see whether this has been followed. If this has not been followed, you have to think very, very you have to be very, very critical about that publication. Exclusions, dropouts. How do you deal with dropouts? Sometimes I can get a person who is not doing so well, and I know that the person has been given this active drug, and that person is not doing well. I can induce that person to you can say, like, make an environment such that the patient who got your treatment can leave the ward, so that I don't have a bad outcome by giving this drug that I think definitely works. So how do you do that? To prevent that, there's a thing called intention to treat analysis. That when a patient comes to a research study, and the patient is given a particular treatment, whether the person completes or not, that person is taken and analyzed. So it is analyzed as randomized. So there are no you can't just delete them from your system. You analyze everyone in a clinical. So you have to see in a paper whether that has been followed, whether the analysis is intention to treat. So again, I think now when you're presented with expert opinion, case reports, case series, cohort studies, randomized trial, non-randomized trial, you have to see whether this is a myth or a fact. And then you know what questions to ask, and then ask them without fear. You can actually write to the journal and ask, this sounds very funny. There are in universities, not in Sri Lanka, but in other universities, there are centers dedicated to looking at research fraud. You can just write to them. They will initiate the investigation. We don't have it in Sri Lanka. We don't have it in Peradeniya also. So I would like to conclude by saying, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. So that's it. If without your opinion is not backed up by data, it is just an opinion on the road. That's all. It's like an opinion of a street vendor. That's it. It's like Dhammika Paniya thought of opinion. You have to give data. Why would I take that without data? Why would I change my practice because my boss said so? Why should I change my practice if there is no data to back his opinion? So I would stop at that. I have to thank a lot of people. Those two studies that I talked about were, a lot of people behind all these names. They were all behind this study and studies and many other studies. So I don't know whether I made any sense, but you know, don't don't create myths and don't believe in myths. You will always ask for data. Ask for data when somebody says something works or does not work.